Welcome back to The Explainer. Now, since you're here, I know you're someone who really values efficiency, so we're just going to skip the usual agenda today. Instead, we are jumping straight into a massive industry pain point. We're talking about strategic portfolio risk, and more importantly, the specific executive controls you actually need to master it. I mean, if you've ever watched a project just completely spiral out of control while the paperwork somehow looked totally fine, well, this is exactly what you need to understand.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The absolute most common risk management failure in the entire engineering and construction industry, it actually isn't missing a risk at the beginning. No, it's writing an absolutely excellent risk register at the project sanction phase, filing it away on some dusty shelf, and literally never opening it again. Fast forward 18 months and your actual project is on fire with completely different problems, all while your beautifully documented risk management plan just sits there, perfectly preserved and, well, utterly useless. So why does this keep happening? Simply put, because project risks silently mutate. A risk register just can't be a static sanction document. It has to be treated like a living organism that is constantly adapting to reality. I mean, think about it. As a project progresses from the paper world of engineering into the hard, steel world of construction, the risks shift. Rows need to reorder, severities have to change color, entirely new risks enter the frame. And the closed ones, they drop off. If you're treating your risk register as just some box-ticking exercise, you're basically flying blind. Which brings us to our first structural, executive-level control for strategic portfolio risk management. Control 1, the top 10 to the board.
So, how exactly do we fix this systemic failure? Well, the crucial point here is this absolute non-negotiable rule. The top 10 risks must go to the executive board. And I want to be clear, this isn't just a suggestion, it's a mandatory governance mechanism. You extract the top 10 highest severity items from that living organism of a risk register we just talked about, and you put them directly in front of the ultimate decision makers. Now, doing this requires a strictly enforced monthly cadence. Month 1, month 2, month 3. Not quarterly, not just at major gate reviews, every single month. The sheer discipline of forcing an organization to re-rank and report these risks every 30 days, that is exactly what forces leadership to notice when, say, risk number 7 has quietly crept all the way up to become risk number 1. It completely removes the element of surprise. All right, moving on to control number 2, the cold eye review. Before you even win the work, right during that high-stakes tender phase, you absolutely must mandate a cold eye review. Basically, this means bringing in external experts, people who have absolutely no stake in winning the specific bid, to challenge every single assumption. We are talking schedule durations, yard productivity rates, currency escalation, contingency, the whole shebang. The psychology here is just critical to understand. A bid team that has worked, say, 8 weeks straight on a massive tender, they are psychologically incapable of concluding that it shouldn't be submitted. Naturally, they want to win. So you need someone in the room who genuinely does not care if you win. And this brilliantly illustrates the point. Think of an aircraft's pre-flight check. The pilot who just flew the aircraft in still walks the checklist with a second officer reading it aloud. The cold eye review is essentially that co-pilot reading the checklist. It isn't there because the captain isn't competent, right? It's there because deep familiarity makes people skip items they're absolutely certain about. The entire value of that second pair of eyes is that they do not share your certainty. They're there to combat those dangerous blind spots. Next up is Control 3, the hidden variable, local content. So while those external reviewers are busy digging into the assumptions, there's one very specific risk they need to be on the lookout for, and that's local content. Now, requirements to source labor and fabrication locally are completely legitimate, and often they're politically non-negotiable. But here's the catch. Executives often price this as just a simple, linear added expense. That's the expected impact. But the actual impact, it's a genuine shortage of production and execution resources in that specific market. It completely drains the local resource pool of certified welders and specialized supervisors. And that doesn't just add cost, it injects extreme, severe schedule unpredictability. And as any seasoned project director will tell you for sure, unpredictability is far harder to price than just a simple expense. Which brings us to the climax, the burden of proof. This is the final judgment call. All right, so we have our live risk register, our cold eye reviewers, and our true unpredictability tracking in place. Now I want you to put yourself in the executive chair for just a moment. Imagine your cold eye reviewers come back and say, hey, your bid is 15% underpriced. But your internal bid team fiercely disagrees. So what do you do? Who do you believe in that scenario? Just take a second to really think about how you would handle that kind of standoff.
Well, the definitive answer to that standoff is actually quite simple. The burden of proof sits firmly with the optimist. The internal bid team must disprove the external challenge with hard empirical data. They cannot just use their gut feel for the project. No way. They need to show you historical productivity benchmarks, they need to show you signed subcontractor quotes, and they have to show you evidenced escalation models. Because if they can't disprove the challenge with actual data, then the cold eye review stands. Period.
Now, what's really interesting here is the harsh reality that underpins that entire rule. In a highly competitive tender, optimism is not a neutral assumption. It is incredibly, incredibly dangerous. In fact, optimism is the precise mechanism by which engineering and construction firms win the exact work that eventually destroys their balance sheets. When you just assume the best-case scenario without the data to back it up, you aren't actually winning a contract. You're basically just buying an unquantified liability. Let's move to input and outcome and look at these executive controls all together. When we actually bring all of this together, it fundamentally changes how an organization operates. You came into this explainer knowing that risk is a massive pain point. But now you're leaving equipped with 3 very specific executive controls to override that destructive bid team optimism. Number 1, a live risk register with the top 10 risks reported to the board every single month to force visibility. Number 2, mandated external cold eye reviews on high-value tenders to break that psychological lock-in. And number 3, a completely clear-eyed understanding that local content doesn't just add cost, it injects schedule unpredictability that has to be rigorously priced. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Go back to your desk today and take a hard look at the project you're managing right now. Seriously ask yourself, is your risk register a living shield that's adapting to protect your margins every single month? Or is it just a dusty liability sitting on a shelf, quietly waiting for reality to strike? The choice is entirely up to you and the executive controls you choose to enforce. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.